off this countdown, we have Mark Zuckerberg. Rumor has it that Mark Zuckerberg is an alien or a lizard person. Let me explain. In a number of interviews, people noticed that Mark Zuckerberg barely blinks. It's true. I've seen videos and this dude must have like some watery eyes or something, cause he blinked like once every minute. He just sat there with his eyes wide open, looking like an alien. Then people went on to say that he wears contact lenses to hide his yellow lizard pupils. Maybe that's why he's so smart, because he's an alien. Either that or he's a robot or something. His weird mannerisms has everyone spooked. Conspiracy theorists are adamant that he's going to take over the world and destroy democracy. It's crazy.
In our number 9 spot today, we have Dennis BTK Rader. The BTK killer, whose real name is Dennis Rader, was one of the worst serial killers from 1974 to 1991. He left taunting letters to police and newspapers where he described his crimes, but thankfully his annoyingly large and misplaced ego is what led to his demise. Because he craved the attention so badly, in 2004 he started communicating with the media again to try and be all smug or whatever, but this, combined with his utter lack of knowledge on how technology works, led to him being arrested in 2005. Imagine getting away with those crimes for so long and your ego and your own ignorance does you in the end. During his trial, he didn't apologize for his crimes, but he did describe them in full detail, which is horrifying and honestly very unnerving. After his trial, he ended up being sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences with a minimum of 175 years. When Rader was first arrested and police were taking him to the station, an officer asked him, "Mr. Rader, do you know why you're going downtown?" To which he replied, "Oh, I have suspicions why." Ew. In our number 8 spot today, we have Chester Turner. Chester is an American serial killer who, on April 30th, 2007, was convicted of taking the lives of 11 women in the Los Angeles area, and on June 19th, 2014, he was convicted of 4 more that they were able to tie back to him. He has been referred to by prosecutors as one of the most prolific serial killers in the city's history, and if you know Los Angeles's history with things like that, that is not something to take lightly. In his original trial that led to conviction, Chester was sentenced to death, but at the following one in 2014, he also received an additional death sentence. In the end, like with a lot of these kinds of stories, DNA came to save the day and help authorities find out who was committing these horrible, horrible crimes. In our number 7 spot today, we have Gary Ridgway. This horrible human being is also sometimes known as the Green River Killer, and his crimes took place somewhere between 1982 to potentially as recent as 2001. He was convicted of 49 crimes but confessed to an unbelievable 71, which makes him the second most prolific serial killer in the United States in terms of confirmed killings. Most of his victims were either sex workers or women in other vulnerable circumstances, and through DNA profiling evidence, in 2001, authorities were able to connect him to 4 of his crimes. From there, they made a deal with him where they would spare him the death sentence in exchange for disclosure of the location of all of the missing women. Gary took the deal and was spared the death sentence and instead was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Not only did he say that he chose the type of victims he did because they were, quote, easy to pick, and that he, quote, hated most of them, but he also called his crimes his career. I hate him. In our number 6 spot today, we have Charles Ng. Charles' story really starts off shortly after he moved to the United States on a student visa. He dropped out after his first semester, and soon after he was involved in a hit-and-run accident. He then tried to avoid prosecution by enlisting in the United States Marine Corps, using false documents that stated his birthplace was within the United States. He was arrested by military police a year later for stealing automatic weapons, and then somehow he escaped custody, headed back towards Northern California, and this is where he met Leonard Lake, who is another real piece of work. Charles did end up going away and serving a bit of time, but it was only 18 months and then he was back with Leonard, and that is when the two started their crime spree together. It is believed that together the pair took the lives of somewhere from 11 to 25 different people. When Leonard was caught and brought in for questioning, he sneakily took a cyanide pill he had hidden in his jacket and took his own life, but Charles ended up standing trial. He was convicted for 11 of the killings and he remains on death row at San Quentin. In our number 5 spot today, we have Robert Pickton. This horrible person is one of the worst Canadians to ever live and is one of our country's worst serial killers ever. Pickton dropped out of school and began began working at his family's pig farm, and this is where most of his absolutely horrific crimes took place. He was first arrested in 2002 and was convicted in 2007 of taking the lives of 6 people, but throughout an extremely lengthy investigation, evidence of many more killings came to light. During his time in jail, an undercover police officer posed as his cellmate, and Pickton confessed to 49 crimes to him. Apparently, he was saying to the undercover officer that he wanted to take one more life to make it an even 50, and that he only got caught because he was sloppy. The entire trial was a bit of a mess, but it led to a life sentence without the possibility of parole for 25 years, which was the longest possible sentence under Canadian law at the time. This unfortunately does mean that he will be eligible for parole within the next decade, so let's hope that never ever happens. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Golden State Killer. The Golden State Killer is one of the most well-known serial killers ever, and that is never a good thing. From 1973 to 1986, the GSK was responsible for taking the lives of 13 people, harming 50, and 120 different burglaries all across California. Throughout the investigation process, he used different tactics to both taunt and threaten police and the victims, which is just on a whole other disgusting level. Through recent genetic testing, like those 23andMe things, the identity of the GSK was finally revealed after years and years of investigations. Basically, they uploaded a DNA profile that they were able to get from the crime scenes to the website GED Match. They were able to find 10 to 20 people who had the same great-great-great-grandparents as a match. And then from there, the genealogist made a large family tree, and from there, they were then able to single out 2 main suspects. After covertly collecting DNA samples from one of the suspects and comparing them with the crime scene DNA, they were finally able to arrest Joseph James D'Angelo, who is the Golden State Killer. After decades of waiting, the victims of his crimes were finally able to see justice served, as he was sentenced to 12 life sentences plus 8 years. He was spared the death penalty because he admitted to numerous crimes that he had perpetrated, some of which he wasn't even being charged for. He is now 75 years old and will definitely spend the rest of his life in prison. In our number 3 spot today, we have Rodney Alaka. Rodney is a horrible monster who was convicted and sentenced to death for 5 killings that he committed in California from 1977 to 1979. He also received an additional 25 years to life after pleading guilty to 2 other killings in New York from 1971 to 1977. Rodney got away with his crimes for a while because he wasn't the top of the list of suspects, because he was said to be the, quote, charming photographer. Rodney is often referred to as the dating game killer because of his appearance on the show, which, with what we now know about him, is absolutely horrifying. What's even crazier is that he actually won the show he was on, but the episode's bachelorette refused to go on a date with him because she found him, quote, creepy. This is just a reminder to always trust your instincts. It isn't exactly known just how many victims Rodney had. It is potentially thought that it could be much higher than the number he was convicted for. In July of last year, Rodney passed away in prison at the age of 77. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Zodiac Killer. This one had to make it on this list today because while there are a plethora of terrifying people on this list, nothing is as terrifying as an uncaught serial killer, and the Zodiac is definitely the most prolific of them all. The Zodiac Killer took the lives of 5 people in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October 1969. He was most known for targeting young couples or a lone male cab driver. Despite 2 people luckily and thankfully escaping his attempted evil doings, he has still never been caught. He was one of those losers who left notes and stuff for the police to find. I like that they think they're being all cool and clever and brave while they do that. Like, if you're so brave and almighty and unafraid, then show us your face. While no one has heard from the Zodiac since 1974, the case remains active in many different countries, and maybe one day we'll finally know who the real Zodiac is. In our number 1 spot today, we have Robert Hansen. Robert is often referred to as the Butcher Baker, and his story truly is horrific. He is one of the most prolific serial killers in Alaska's history because, for over a decade, he would kidnap women and bring them into the wilderness where he would then stalk them like prey. I am just now realizing that there is definitely an episode of Criminal Minds about this guy. Sometimes the premise is just so dark that it sticks with you. The reason he got away with his crimes for so long is because outside of these horrific things, he was just a soft-spoken baker. One of my best friends has the nicest, most kind bakers for parents, and now I'm starting to feel a little suspicious. Might want to look into them, Robin. Robert was heading to church by day and prowling strip clubs at night looking for the next person to take. What led to the downfall of this horrible monster was a badass named Cindy Paulson who was able to escape from Robert and was sure to leave evidence behind. She then went to authorities and told them what happened, and this led to a search warrant for Robert's property, which is where all the evidence they needed lied. Robert is believed to have taken the lives of at least 17 women, and in 1983 he was sentenced to 461 years and a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Quincy Allen. Quincy Allen is a man who went on a crime spree between July and August of 2002 where he took the lives of 4 people. His crime spree was actually inspired while he was in prison serving time for stealing a vehicle. It was here that a fellow inmate decided to start recruiting others and told him that he could get Quincy a job as a mafia hitman. When Quincy was released, he decided to buy a shotgun so he could start practicing. Man, I really wish he showed this kind of dedication to literally anything else. Quincy started off this horrific crime spree on July 7th, 2002 by attacking a 51-year-old homeless man who was sleeping at the time. Luckily, this man was able to survive the attack. His crimes continued until he was arrested on August 14th, 2002. After his arrest and trial, Quincy received a sentence of death and is still on death row awaiting execution. His sentencing did not deter him from the criminal life, however, as in 2009, Quincy, along with another inmate, planned an attack on a correctional officer at the prison they both reside at. Quincy was intended to be executed on January 8th, 2010, but there was a stay of execution that was accepted, and as of July 26th, 2022, literally just over a month ago, Quincy's death sentence was overturned.
Coming in at number 9, we have Jeffrey Bezos. I'm sensing a theme here, okay? People like to think that rich, powerful men are aliens. Jeffrey Bezos, CEO, entrepreneur, born in 1964, is another individual that might be an alien. Also, that was a reference to Bo Burnham. I love him. His song, Jeffrey Bezos, go check it out. Not only is he very intelligent, but people have been studying his mannerisms and think there's something wrong with him. Take a look at this.
But that was actually not supposed to be a bad pun. And then disclosure, you are...
Is it just me, or is his laugh undeniably creepy? He keeps his eyes wide open and locked on his target while laughing. Also, it seems forced. Maybe aliens don't have any emotions, so he has to force himself to laugh at jokes so he seems normal. I don't even know what to think anymore. Also, side note, someone deepfaked Jeffrey into a Star Trek episode, and let's just say I'm now scarred for life.
Is this a deception? Do you intend to destroy yourselves?
Moving on to number 8, we have Alien Barbie. Ukrainian woman Valeria Lukyanova is known as the human Barbie doll. She's got an impossible tiny waist, wide doll-like eyes, and a big bust. In fact, to achieve this look, she had some of her ribs removed. But not only is she a real-life Barbie doll, but she also claims that she's a time-traveling alien. Yes, you heard me correctly. This woman claims that she's not human. She said that she's an alien that has come to Earth to save the world. Little late for that. But what is she saving us from, you ask? Well, she says negative energy. Okay. And she has a goal to transform humans into demigods. I mean, that's cool. I want to be a demigod, so sign me up for that. She also has claimed to be a breatharian. She says that she lives off of nothing but light and air. So maybe she really is an alien, because it's physically impossible to live off of just light and air. Like, you need food and water. Coming in at number 7, we have Grimes. Grimes might just be an alien, and so might be her partner, Elon Musk, but more on him later. But how cute! 2 aliens came from space and connected on Earth. That's what I call destiny and true love. Anyways, if you follow her, then you know she's quite the character. And just recently, she got alien scars on her back. Or at least that's what she calls them. They're just a bunch of light-colored lines that she got tattooed on her back. But maybe aliens actually have tattoos or designs like that on their backs, and she knows something that we don't know. I mean, there's a huge conspiracy out there that Grimes is an alien. Just search on Reddit and you'll find a number of people who believe this theory. Moving on, at number 6 we have Poppy.
Hi, it's me, Poppy. Hi, I'm Poppy.
Poppy is an American singer, songwriter, musician, and YouTuber. She is known for her very unusual videos where she talks in a very soft and high-pitched voice. Is this just her persona or stage act, or is she an alien? Now, there's so many different theories surrounding her. From being part of the Illuminati, to being created by the government, to being a hologram, to even being a robot. I'm telling you, there's tons of theories out there. But a more popular one is that she's an alien from space. Most of this is based off of her mannerisms in her videos and the fact that we hardly know anything about her true self. One video that really started this theory was one where she reacts to a Fine Bros video. In this video, she cited every single word that was shown from her older videos. And she did this without showing any emotions, and without even acknowledging the kids that were reacting to her. It's very weird to say the least.
Hi, I'm Poppy.
You're freaking me out.
I wanted to see you.
What the heck?
Thanks for coming down here with me.
We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Steve Buscemi. And I just want to start off by saying that he's an amazing actor. Like, totally underrated, and I'm so happy talking about him because, also fun fact, we share the same birthday, so I just feel this connection to him. So Steve, if you're watching this, I want to be your friend. Anyways, people often judge Steve based off of his looks. I mean, I think he was on the list of like ugliest people in Hollywood or something like that, which like, that is mean. How did they get away with that? That's super hurtful. Lists like that just shouldn't exist, okay? But anyways, due to his unique appearance, people think that Steve is out of this world. They think that he's an alien or cryptoid or something like that. There's even a bunch of memes out there making fun of Steve saying that he's an alien. I personally don't think he's one. Like, if we're judging based off looks, that's just mean. He's a great guy. But I still put him on this list for all you people out there that think that he could be one. Watch him actually be an alien. I'm like defending him. In our 4th spot, we have Tilda Swinton, who, might I add, is another incredible actor. Tilda's range is unbelievable. She is unrecognizable in some roles. Like, she goes from playing the White Witch in the Chronicles of Narnia, to the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, to Thora Thacker in Hail Caesar. She's just so versatile. And that's why some people think that she's an alien, because the ease in which she can transform her appearance and look like a completely different person. Or the ease in which she can change her personality and behave like a completely different person. I mean, I just call that good acting, but then other people are like, aliens! Also, people think that she's an alien because she has a unique appearance. Again, let's not judge a book by its cover here. It seems like the people trying to behave normally are the ones we should be concerned about, okay? In our 3rd spot, we have Bill Gates. I wish I had the amount of wealth that Bill Gates had, and now he's single, so Bill, hit me up. Just kidding. You're too old for me. Anyways, according to some people, Bill is an alien. How come aliens always have to be the richest people? Like, seriously, you got Mark, you got Jeffrey Bezos, and now Bill. How come all the alien dudes are rich? Anyways, the main reason why people think that he's an alien is due to his advanced knowledge on computers and technology. So aliens are supposed to be highly advanced creatures. They created highly advanced spacecrafts to travel throughout space and to Earth. Maybe Bill was sent from space to help advance human life. And then he liked it so much here that he decided to stick around. Or maybe he got too famous and was like, oh crap, I can't just disappear from the public eye. They're gonna wonder where I went. And now he's kind of stuck on Earth against his will. Moving on to number 2, we have Stephen Colbert. Honestly, he's the last person I would think to be an alien. But that's a good thing, right? It means that he's being stealthy about it. It's always the people you least expect. So a woman named Liz Brown came up with proof as to why she believes Stephen is an alien. Her first point is his intelligence. She said, and I quote, "A recent report showed that viewers of the Colbert Report are more well-informed about political and social issues than viewers of legitimate news programs on ABC or CNN." Most alien experts agree that our interplanetary friends have a level of intelligence far beyond human capabilities. Of course, this could also mean that regular Colbert Report viewers are being groomed for abduction. End of quote. Imagine that, Stephen using his show to gain fans and then abduct them and use them in tests run by aliens. The next point she made is his immunity from diseases. She said that she has never seen him get sick. She said, and I quote, "What kind of regular human beings can consume Bud Light Lime on a regular basis on air and still not get sick?" End quote. She's kind of got a point there. She then also went on to talk about Steven's love for space. In 2009, he made a public campaign telling his viewers to vote for the new treadmill on the International Space Station to be named after him. Why did he want this so badly? Well, it could be that this was a way to send a message to his alien friends out there, telling them like, we did it, I'm in control of the humans, this is proof. Crazy, isn't it? Makes you really think. And in our number one spot today we have Elon Musk. Why does Elon Musk want to go to Mars so bad? Honestly, he just wants to return to his home planet. He has announced a number of times that he wants to retire and die on Mars. He probably hates it here on Earth and is dying to get back. Let's look at more evidence. This dude invented the Tesla, like he's super intelligent. First off, he got into the electrical vehicle business, which only represents 0.1% of all cars sold. Looking at that, it would seem like a bad thing to get into, but nonetheless, he did and he succeeded. Why? Because he's got alien capabilities to not only see into the future, but also create high-tech things, like Teslas. Someone else added that his end goal is to save Earth. He's seen into the future and how bad global warming gets. So he's trying to reduce global emissions through his cars. Maybe make them cheaper then. Not only that, but on a number of occasions he has tweeted out some suspicious things. Someone tweeted at him asking if he was an alien, and he said, obviously. So, he just admitted it, okay? I know he's just joking, but still. Another time he tweeted saying aliens built the pyramids. I mean, he was probably one of the aliens there building them alongside the Egyptians. In the end, everything he is doing on Earth is to save us, and then, help himself get back to his home planet.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Scott Erskine. We are starting off this list with truly one of the worst people I've ever heard about. Scott's story starts off when he was a child and suffered an injury that involved his head and brain. He seemed to recover fine physically, but continued to complain of headaches and that sort of thing, and it is unclear if these things were ever looked into further. At a very young age, he began to commit violent crimes against others that I truly cannot even speak about here on YouTube. He spent 4 years in prison for one of his crimes when he was around 17 years old, but when he was paroled after the 4 years, he immediately began committing crimes again. In 1993, Scott invited a woman who was waiting for the bus into his home and ended up holding her hostage for several days. After letting her go, he was quickly arrested and ended up being sentenced to 70 years in prison. This is when he had to submit DNA to a database, and in March of 2001, the DNA was matched when the cold cases of the unsolved murders of Jonathan Sellers and Charlie Keever were reopened. In 2004, a jury sentenced him to death, and 6 days later he was transferred to San Quentin. In an interesting turn of events, Scott did die on death row, but it wasn't due to a scheduled execution. Scott died a couple years ago in July of 2020 after contracting COVID-19. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Golden State Killer. The Golden State Killer is one of the most famous serial killers of all time, and he managed to elude police for 30 years. From 1973 to 1986, the GSK was responsible for taking the lives of 13 people, harming 50, and 120 different burglaries all across California. Throughout the investigation process, he used different tactics to both taunt and threaten police and victims, which is just another level of being messed up. If you don't know how this story ends, buckle up though, because it is wild. So you know those like family DNA tests like 23andMe where you send in your DNA and then they send you back your genealogy? Well, basically these kinds of services helped identify who the real Golden State Killer was. In 2018, when Detective Paul Holes and FBI lawyer Steve Kramer uploaded the Golden State Killer DNA profile, which they were able to obtain from the crime scenes, to the website GED Match, they were able to find 10 to 20 people who had the same great grandparents as this DNA match. From there, a genealogist made a large family tree, and then they were able to single out 2 main suspects. After covertly collecting DNA samples from one of the suspects and comparing them to the crime scene DNA, they were finally able to arrest Joseph James DeAngelo, who is the Golden State Killer. After decades of waiting, the victims of his crimes were finally able to see justice served, as he was sentenced to 12 life sentences plus 8 years. He was spared the death penalty because he admitted to numerous crimes he had perpetrated, some of which he wasn't even being charged for. He is now 75 years old and will definitely spend the rest of his life in prison. In our number 8 spot today, we have David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz, or the Son of Sam, is an American serial killer who terrorized New York from July of 1976 to July of 1977. He took the lives of 6 people and wounded 7 others, all while eluding the biggest manhunt in New York City history. He was one of those arrogant ones who leaves like little notes for the police promising to do it again, but his arrogant self was caught for his crimes, and he was arrested on August 10th, 1977 and was indicted for his crimes. He confessed to all of them and claimed that he was just obeying the orders of a demon that had manifested itself in the form of a dog that belonged to his neighbor. He was found mentally competent to stand trial, and he pleaded guilty to his crimes, which left him sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences. He later admitted to making up the dog story, which yeah, duh, but he did say that he was a member of a violent satanic cult and his crimes were committed as a part of that. These claims were investigated, but no one has ever been able to confirm or deny them. In our number 7 spot today, we have Tex Watson. Tex Watson was one of the central members of the Manson family, which was led by Charles Manson, and he was a willing participant for the horrible Tate and LaBianca crimes that took place on August 9th and 10th, 1969. In October of 1969, Tex knew his arrest was coming, so he fled to his home state of Texas, but was later arrested and extradited back to California. Once he was in California, he refused to talk or eat and ended up losing 55 pounds, which got him sent to get tested to see if he was fit to stand trial, which he was. In 1971, he was convicted on 7 counts of first-degree unalive and 1 count of conspiracy to commit unalive. He originally received a death sentence, but it ended up being commuted to life in prison. Get this, you guys, though, he was able to release a book while in prison, and he got married, and through conjugal visits, he was able to have 4 children. 4 children. But thankfully in 1996 they banned those kinds of visits for people serving life in prison, and in 2003 he got divorced because his wife had met someone else. I hope so. In our number 6 spot today, we have Scott Erskine. Early in life, Scott began to commit violent crimes against others that I truly cannot even speak about here on YouTube, they're so bad. He spent 4 years in prison for one of these crimes when he was around 17 years old, but when he was paroled after the 4 years, he immediately began committing crimes again. In 1993, Scott invited a woman who was waiting for the bus into his home and ended up holding her hostage for several days. After letting her go, he was quickly arrested and ended up being sentenced to 70 years in prison. This is when he had to submit DNA to a database, and in March of 2001, that DNA was matched when the cold cases of the unsolved killings of Jonathan Sellers and Charlie Keever were reopened. In 2004, a jury sentenced him to death, and 6 days later he was transferred to San Quentin. In an interesting turn of events, Scott did die on death row, but it wasn't due to a scheduled execution. Scott died a couple of years ago in July of 2020 after contracting COVID-19. In our number 5 spot today, we have Charles Ng. Charles' story starts off shortly after he moved to the United States on a student visa. He dropped out after his first semester, and soon after he was involved in a hit-and-run accident. He then tried to avoid prosecution by enlisting in the United States Marine Corps, using false documents that stated his birthplace was within the United States. He was arrested by military police a year later for stealing automatic weapons, and then somehow he escaped custody, headed back toward Northern California, and this is where he met Leonard Lake, who is another real piece of work. Charles did end up going away and serving a bit of time, but it was only 18 months and he was back with Leonard, and that is when the two started their crime spree. It is believed that together the pair took the lives of somewhere from 11 to 25 different people. When Leonard was caught and brought in for questioning, he sneakily took a cyanide pill he had hidden in his jacket and took his own life, but Charles ended up standing trial. He was convicted for 11 of the killings, and he remains on death row at San Quentin. In our number 4 spot today, we have Sean Great. Sean is a serial killer who committed a series of crimes from 2006 until until he was apprehended in 2016. Throughout his decade of criminal activity, it is thought that he took the lives of at least 5 people. So basically, his story is a little confusing, but in September of 2016, Sean was arrested and later indicted for 2 killings as well as a kidnapping and harming a woman whose 911 call actually led to his arrest. At the same time, in another county next door, he was also being charged with 2 other deaths as well as another one from all the way back in 2016. This final count from all of those years ago was actually an unsolved Jane Doe case who had been unidentified for 12 years. When Sean confessed to this crime, he wasn't even sure who she was, he just said he believed her name was Dana. On May 7th, 2018, Sean was convicted on 2 of the counts, and on March 1st, 2019, he pleaded guilty to 2 of the others, and on September 11th, 2019, he pleaded guilty to the additional count. In the end, he was sentenced to death and has remained on death row since that final plea and sentencing, and he is currently scheduled to be executed in 2025. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Zodiac Killer. This one had to make it on this list because while there are a plethora of terrifying people on this list, nothing is as terrifying as an uncaught serial killer, and the Zodiac is definitely the most prolific of them all. The Zodiac Killer took the lives of 5 people in the San Francisco Bay Area between 1968 and October of 1969. He was most known for targeting young couples or a lone male cab driver. Despite 2 people luckily and thankfully escaping his attempted evil doings, he has still never been caught. While no one has heard from the Zodiac since 1974, the case remains active in many different counties, and maybe one day we'll finally know who the real Zodiac is. In our number 2 spot today, we have Dale Hausner and Samuel Dietman. Known as the serial shooters, the crimes these guys committed are definitely on the list of fears I have, which I'm pretty sure spawned from a Criminal Minds episode. These 2 were actively committing these crimes between May of 2005 and August of 2006. Basically, they were arsonists who would randomly set fire to objects, but they would also drive around and commit random drive-by shootings. That's the really scary part. The fire thing is also bad, don't get me wrong. There's just something about completely random violence that absolutely terrifies me. In the end, a series of tips is what led investigators to identify the perpetrators of these horrible crimes. In particular, one from a friend of Samuel who explained that Sam had actually confessed to some of the killings one night while drinking. In Dale's trial, he was found guilty of 80 out of the 87 felony charges that were brought forth, and that was all in one single trial. In the end, he was sentenced to death 6 times, and his brother, who was later found out to have assisted in some of the crimes, was sentenced to 25 years. Samuel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Doodler. While this nickname sounds very sweet, it, like everything else on this list, is very sinister. The nickname that this unidentified killer received is due to his practice of sketching his victims before taking their lives. This unidentified killer committed their crimes in the San Francisco area from January of 1974 to September of 1975, and they specifically targeted gay men. It is believed that 14 deaths can be attributed to this killer, while 3 others were injured in the process. Unfortunately, because of the stigma and sensitivity surrounding gay men at the time, the 3 who survived this monster were very reluctant when speaking with the authorities for fear of being outed as a result of it. This has led to there being very little information for them to work with in terms of identifying the man responsible. For a while, there was a primary suspect, but that person has never been officially charged because sadly, none of the survivors felt comfortable enough to testify in court.